We had to do unimaginable things to get this in shape for you all.
My equipment's broken.
3, 2, 1.
Gushers Episode 6. I am so happy to have today Ben Zucker. We've been friends for many, many years.
So I am a composer and performer, especially a multi-instrumentalist improviser, as well as a producer in the electronic sense, but also in the big picture arts sense. I curate an improvised music series at Elastic Arts, and also do a lot of work producing concerts and professional development for the new music scene here in the city. I moved here 2017 from the Bay Area, where I met Scott, to do grad studies at Northwestern. I guess split time between, the academy and the school of the city. Honestly, it was as much sort of like the idea of coming to Chicago, as much as the grad program that was really enticing to me. And I think that is an appropriate, and part of the reason of that is obviously just like the sound of the music, records and players and everything, that really got me jazzed, so to speak, about here. And I think it's a good segue for the topic.
Who are we gushing about today?
Right, so today, the gush subject is the vibraphonist composer Jason Adasiewicz.
Adasiewicz.
Rhymes with Manischewitz.
Rhymes with Manischewitz.
For those keeping track at home. So as part of my multi-instrumentalist practice, I mostly play vibraphone, or try to. It's not the easiest instrument to bring around, and so I also have been active on mostly cornet, voice, keyboards, electronics, but I do find that much of my improvisation practice is rooted in the vibes. And I guess the reason that I wanted to talk about Jason today for this podcast.
It's not a podcast.
It's a podcast with video. It's a vidcast.
It's only on YouTube.
No sponsored content. Okay.
There's no. This is an ad-free environment.
The reason I wanted to talk about Jason here is in recognition that as a vibraphonist, it's not an easy instrument. Besides the fact that you kind of have to break it down, set it up, carry it around everywhere, there's also just the fact that it as an instrument is beautiful.
Yeah, you were telling me in the other room that it's hard to find your own voice on vibraphone. So yeah,
exactly.
Could you go into that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't exactly have the kind of range of timbral or direct personal sound production the same way that you do with a wind instrument especially, or even for that matter, it kind of doesn't have the exact same sort of affordances for extended techniques in the way that, say, like a piano or a string instrument does. You are dealing with some metal bars that will make a pitch sound when you do anything to them. I mean, you have a variety of implements, for sure.
There's preparations.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like there is like a wide range of possible things you can do. And I think in this case, this is also as much as it relates to the particular notion of like voice, personal voice, as it is in like the jazz vibraphone tradition. Because when you think about the traditional conception of like a jazz vibraphonist is usually like Lionel Hampton, Milt Jackson, Gary Burton, folks who had a very particular sound and approach to the instrument that was a combination of their physical technique, but also a conception of how line works in the instrument, as befitting their context and historical period. Hampton and Jackson especially had a very sort of like smooth, clean approach to their lines. There's a real precision to the sound. I was thinking about this before I came in. You could say that, like, maybe this is maybe a hot tip, but like the history of the avant-garde jazz vibraphone starts about halfway through Hat and Beard off Eric Dolphy's Out to Lunch, where Bobby Hutcherson has a section where he just like whacks the lowest note on the thing a couple of times before moving into more of his improvisational approach that was related to a linear bop or free bop conception.
You're making a statement.
a hell of a statement. And this, of course, is that there have been vibraphonists involved in free jazz who have incorporated like the movements or certain parts of the movements, embrace of volume, embrace of a non-linear approach to harmony and melody. There's no end of like fantastic examples historically, folks, like of
So you just said a little bit of jargon, non-linear approach to harmony and melody. We don't have to get into that now.
Yeah,
but maybe you talk more about Jason.
That's true. Before like the whole history lesson and just maybe actually, the first thing it would be great to do is maybe just play the first track, which is from one of Jason's albums, his Sunrooms trio, which is him on the vibraphone, Nate McBride on bass, and Mike Reed on drums. So I guess without like guiding the listener too much, one of the things I think is really worth noting is how his playing really rings and echoes, and a lot of sound. Like there's a hard-hitting sound, but not besides that hard-hitting sound, there is the sort of continuous sound as the notes continue to resonate. So that's something worth paying attention to into this clip that I've asked Scott to cue up.
You ready?
Yeah.
That is gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make the vibe sound bad, which is great. But then the thing about making it really interesting and having like that voice and a really particular thing is, so like in comparison to some of those like more traditional players that I sort of mentioned, where so I talked about like, linear approaches where it's really sort of focusing on, sort of the impact of one note at a time. And so like the vibraphone's got a damper pedal, right? That you are supposed to sort of control phrasing by lifting it up and down. And one of the things that this really is really good at is just sort of like letting it down and letting the sound build up, which instead of like bringing attention to just like melody, there becomes this like really like, I don't know, sculpture, or like very tactile thing to the sound that you almost as if you can just sort of like see like the music sort of like whoosh and sort of like float before fading away. And so you combine that with his approach to melody and harmony, really informed by free jazz tradition and the folks that he was playing with when he came onto the scene in the 90s, 2000s. And that's sort of like the start of like what makes him really interesting to listen to, an inspiration on the instrument. Besides tune, which just sort of combines like some really like punchy statements with some acrobatics of lines. And the other thing then is also that like that you can hear it here too, where it's just like he's really hitting those, like he is striking like the bars. And this is sort of like the thing that is sort of most stereotypically sort of could be brought up about him, that the first thing is probably just like, he can play the vibes really loud, but there's a lot more to it than that. And it's that, first off, I mean, just like keeping a certain level of like volume and strike up is no mean feat, because it's just like, you can work out and wear out, whether it's your wrist or the four different parts of how you play and how you strike. And of course what mallet you use too. There are all these factors that go into producing volume, but it can be really easy to just sort of like wear yourself out, like really going for it for a sustained period of time. But like Jason feels like it's just like he's able to just like keep it up, and have that really like effective, powerful strike, like throughout a track, throughout performances. So like, I mean, for context and for instance, and like also in the next clip, the second time I met Jason. The first time was one of the first time I came to Chicago in like 2013 and sat in on the old Sounds of the City workshop. But then the second time I met him when I was living in London in 2016, I saw him, his quartet at Cafe Auto with John Noble, Edwards. I might be mixing these as the rhythm section, but he was going toe-to-toe volume-wise with the notoriously honky Peter Brotzmann. And a saxophone doing what it does versus like a vibraphone doing what it does, it's not necessarily the most evenly paired match, but it's like the way that...
as a violist, I know this very well.
We would smoke you. But I think it's really cool. It's remarkable to see that. I mean, not just for the spectacle of it, though. I mean, there kind of is an element to that like, also related to, being a vibraphonist, it's kind of like a cool instrument. And, there's a way that sort of like the flow of it looks, that there's a kind of smoothness that... It's
very gestural.
Yeah.
There's like motor activities going on.
Yeah. And so there can be like a mode of presentation that goes with that. But like... So yeah, really goes for it, and it also reflects, I think, a lot of his drumming background too. So I think it's it's really fun to watch, but that shouldn't also like not as a way of just like substituting for like the my like awe at the technique and approach. So maybe it just like makes sense to sort of show what that looks like. So this is a live performance of Adasiewicz and Brotzmann duo from 2014.
Oh my god.
That
There are
point it
moments where
ends.
like Jason, he's like hopping around behind, it's like jumping up and down.
Yeah, no, he's the enthusiastic guy. Like it's, and and that also applies like both while playing and out of playing.
So as a vibraphonist, how do you hear that?
Um, I like hear it. That's would be um even like half of that would be like a marathon session.
Yeah, there's so much going on. Like Peter, of course, is doing his thing, and Jason feels like he's expelling so much energy.
Yeah.
And he's really sustaining it, but also you can hear them listening to their phrasing like intently. Like obviously, Peter's not going to be blowing that hard. You know, he's not circular breathing. He's phrasing and he's breathing in between phrases.
Yeah.
And they're kind of going. They're matching each other like phrase by phrase.
Being able to match that is really cool. You know, like the vibraphone again as an instrument, like you've got four mallets, B2, but in either which case that you can make multiple notes at a time. So this does mean that when I talked about line, that you can play like single note melodies that will have a shape to it too.
Right, right.
When you play chords, those will have like a shape to it too. But to create like a moving line that really has a variety in thickness, like, and that be able to expand that, and I guess if you do, at least I feel like you can really like see sort of where that line sort of like expand and contract, to see sound sort of sustain, hang around, or go away in a way that is just not necessarily like in the technical wheelhouse or a preference of other vibraphonists. I don't think it's like hyperbole to say that like a close approximation is the way that often when like listening to the pianist Cecil Taylor, that it was easy to dismiss as just noise was actually like a very like I considered a practice application of like spread of just like kinds of dissonance in order to make shapes and structures.
So you can say Jason is taking like a Cecil Taylor approach.
Yeah,
to vibraphone.
Just one to name was of like like a lineage of, I guess, like of keyboard instrument players who have focused in on that aspect of the playing. Was it the pianist Matthew Shipp talked about like what he called like his like Black Mystery School tradition of pianists that's included like especially like Thelonious Monk or it's not unlike and Taylor of Mal Waldron, of certain sort of like extra piano, like post piano approaches to the piano. And I think this is an approach to the vibraphone that takes in a lot of the bigger picture about what you want the sound on the instrument to be like. Whereas, so we're really working with the thing on all levels, in a way that is not necessarily fully in like vibraphone parlance. Even like other players in the free tradition, there can still be like a focus on sound and sure, but it's definitely like sculpted to a higher degree here. And it's also then worth noting that like I think being part of a bunch of groups here in Chicago in the 90s and 2000s that were again, like the ones stuff that I loved and motivated me to come here. Like you found like a really like bunch of like really appropriate close knit collaborators. One of those groups that's been doing a lot right now is that trio with Dave Rempis and Chris Corsano.
Yeah.
And so I also have a clip of that to just show more just things about like like things that he's doing that like other people aren't necessarily. Is from a really recent show
Is that this one here?
Yeah, that's, and so it's just sort of like showing that, like, honestly, that like something that, I mean, you could there are extended techniques on the vibraphone. Like, you can do things other than hit it with mallets.
Right.
It's it's definitely like a thing that we're very familiar with from like contemporary classical music practice, and it has a sort of like has found its way into jazz and improvised music, like more through that angle, as opposed to the sort of like vibraphone swing Hampton Jackson sort of tradition.
Yeah.
When even the stuff that he's doing, we're just kind of like, that one's new. That one's new.
Should we play it?
Yeah.
Is he smacking that thing with his hand?
No,
I couldn't see if he was.
There's a little bit more. There's one of the things I forget what exactly it is, but it is this like this metal bar that is just it's wider.
Okay.
And so having that, you're able to just sort of like play a whole bunch of notes at one time.
I see.
And it becomes,
I didn't see what he had in. I thought he was like just smacking with his fingertips. Like, that sounds really painful, and he's very loud for playing.
No, there's a tool.
Okay.
Along with and then combining it with like bowing, which is a more like unconventional technique,
right.
but
like,
it's
putting those two techniques together, like very different ways of approaching the instrument at the same time.
Which that creates like a
levels.
whole another like levels of it, and a really to like further extend the sound, and to have that as part of like the toolkit as an improvising vibraphonist is invaluable. I mean, all of us, we have find mode tricks are ways of like working around the sound of the instrument,
and having that dexterity to control both layers at the same time.
Especially that, and on top of like mallet technique and everything. And having shown this sort of like as an extreme example, it's not just sort of like it's not just a spectacle thing. I mean, I think like it's what's great about the vibraphone is that it does make things a really visual component of the playing process.
It's something you don't get so much from wind instruments.
No, and not even depending on like not even necessarily piano and drums are the same way.
Sure.
I mean, it's a special instrument that it takes sort of like a really special approach, like unique approach to make it your sound. I mean, also the other thing that makes Jason an important part of this scene, I mean, being involved with the Denmark Records stuff, and in just besides association with a lot of players that and I was really inspired me.
Yeah.
And it's actually like really like a multi-generational thing too. I mean, having talked about all this, the search for not even a new sound, but original sound, involves looking at new things, but also the old things. Last time I was over at Jason's place, he showed me he had transcribed like a Lionel Hampton solo.
Doing your homework.
Exactly. Yeah. And that homework takes on so many traits. And so like one really interesting thing that he had just done recently was, and the thing I wanted to sort of like bring up last is a recent solo album he did where he interpreted tunes by the saxophonist composer Roscoe Mitchell. And
he was in Chicago recently.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and as like an AACM a prominent member of it for a long time. So Mitchell is also like tied to of like Chicago's legacy of
Yes.
of adventures in jazz. And so it is cool to sort of like also then trying to do that, I guess, transplant of melodies sort of written and conceived of on winds for the most part, I'm guessing, and how it's done on vibraphone, without the tech, the same kind of techniques. You have the melodies and you got to find a way to make that yours.
Yeah, I was when we were listening to the Jason Peter duet and we were talking about the thickness of the line. Obviously, Peter has ways of making his tone thick through embouchure, through singing through the horn, or humming through it, and the vibraphone has to find a way to match that energy.
Yeah, but and also that sort of like how do you do that? Volume is not just a matter of more notes,
Right.
And so in I guess one more like a concluding piece, what I like about this one I've chosen is that it lets sound to sort of be in a way. I mean, also solo instrument sort of practices each have their own kind of like like their Everests, their peaks, and their and their sort of like their tendencies. And I think very often sort of that, at least when I think of sort of like the solo vibes tradition, it's Gary Burton's like incredibly expressive and like harmony and like contrapuntal driven approach that involved an amazing amount of control. Not that it's not happening here, but the way that these recordings, that the sound of the vibes gets to exist and form these melodies, I think is both kind of daring. It's use of through that use of space, but then also sort of like a really beautiful way of paying homage to the tradition, a tradition, and being part of it.
Yeah, I think control is a funny word because when you're learning your instrument, it's all about controlling the sound. And then once when folks get into free improvisation, you're kind of loosening that grip in an artistic way to communicate more freely with others, to be more spontaneous with it. Like maybe you're not getting like the pure tone, but I love the term thrashing.
In terms of of you doing the thrashing or someone or getting thrashed?
No. But like just letting your energy out through the instrument in a way that is maybe more physically expressive, and and you can hear it through the music, even though the instrument may not be speaking at its optimum capacity, but it.
Yeah, but what even is like optimum capacity? There's part of the whole of, I guess what we term like the those like the Afrological tradition of experimental music really involves the idea that we are turning utilizing the instruments as just that for personal expression, and that involves both the expressions of energy, of restraint, of ideas from yourself and from others, and it's all just sort of like finding a way to work with what you have, what you want, what you don't have. I mean, God knows that my own technique is as defined by its limitations as it is what I can do.
Yeah. Oh. I think so much about what I can't do. I'm going to edit that part out, but yeah, it's really just taking the affordances you have with your body, taking how your bandmates move you, and then figuring out how to communicate with them effectively.
Yeah. And for this, so it's so I like listening to Jason as a player on record and live for how he brings that out, both solo here in the ensemble settings. Never enough time for, but his bands like Roll Down, Living by Lanterns, more like super worth hearing how the sound becomes something for the whole ensemble to work within, and being able to do that is really inspiring.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.